Thank you. Mr. Anderson, how critical is nuclear fission surface power to achieving a sustained presence on the moon? And what milestones must NASA meet in the next few years to ensure the United States, not China, is the first to field reliable lunar power infrastructure?
Senator, thank you for that question. I think it's a perfect example. Nuclear propulsion and nuclear power is exactly where NASA should be focused on. This is an example of a game-changing technology that, as we look at our geopolitical rival in China, and how do you move the needle? How do you get to President Trump's goal of returning American astronauts to the moon by 2028? Start building a moon base, and then, as the space policy talks about, and then we're moving on to Mars. And if you think about nuclear power and propulsion, that's how you do that. We have to stay ahead of the Chinese in this sense, in this area. And I think as we look at NASA and what should we be doing compared to, a lot of people talk about the commercial space industry, this is a great example of today's challenge where we put hard-earned taxpayer dollars towards a technology that will actually change the game. And then if it's ready, which nuclear right now is definitely not ready for a commercial partner, then you hand it over and let the American free enterprise take over.
That's right. And where in NASA's orbit is nuclear research
Senator,
happening at scale and in a world-class way?
Senator, that is at a center very close and near and dear to your heart that we talked about the other day in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to make sure. Speaking of Ohio, the Armstrong Test Facility in Sandusky has unique capabilities to simulate hypersonic flight conditions in high-altitude rocket testing environments. You're a former colonel in the Air Force. How do you believe NASA and DoD can work together to achieve President Trump's national security objectives, such as the Golden Dome?
Sir, it's a great question, and I think this is a good example how it's a whole-of-government approach that the entire United States of America needs to focus on this competitor in China, not only in space, but economically, things like hypersonics, Golden Dome, defense of the homeland. I think they're all interrelated. I think NASA in particular, if you look at our history dating back to the Apollo era of the 60s and early 70s, look at the technologies that have been born from that as we look at F-22 thrust vectoring, stealth technology on our bombers, our fighters. I think that's, hypersonics is now, this generation's version of that.
Great. And you, can you commit to visiting the center within 60, 90 days of your confirmation?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Turning over to you, Dr. Raman, and kind of taking off of the questions that the ranking member asked. Ohio's manufacturing extension partnership for decades, quite frankly, as long as I've been in Cleveland, has supported 14,000 manufacturing businesses across the state through 6 nonprofit centers. These centers help small and medium-sized manufacturers modernize operations, adopt new technologies, strengthen supply chains, and stay competitive. I can tell you firsthand, as somebody who is in the business ecosystem, these are really important operations. Unfortunately, and quite frankly, disappointingly, because I've not heard proper justification, NIST froze $6.1 million in federal funding for all of Ohio's MEP programs. Those federal dollars were matched with state funding, and that freeze triggered a total loss of almost $15 million. An almost complete wipeout of these centers. They had to lay off virtually their entire staff. Rebuilding that is going to be very, very difficult. And like I said, I will say this. I have a great relationship with the Commerce Department from Secretary Lutnick on down, but in this particular case, I've gotten almost no information on what's actually going on, which has been very disappointing. Supposedly there's an audit out there, but yet there's nothing public to provide those detailed funding. Findings. The MEP model, by the way, is not fully federally funded. As I mentioned, there's state funds, but there's also private funding. So let me just kind of I want you to be clearer than you were with the ranking member. Do you support the MEP model? This is not about the audit, just in general, do you support the model of MEP?
Thank you, Senator. A really important question. As you know, we have a MEP program for our state in Indiana that runs through Purdue University as well. I know MEP programs as broad partisan support. They've done a lot of good. At the same time, like I mentioned, there are concerns from the IG reports.
No, but differently. But you support the model. You support. Remember, Ohio State's still a low raw at Indiana for what you guys did to us. But so I'm just to be clear. Do you support the model? That's a yes or no. Do you think the model works, or the model doesn't work?
I think a lot of MEP programs have done a lot of good work, for sure.
Okay. I'm not sure that that's a yes. We'll have to explore that one. But I also want to make certain that you're committed to reviewing the funding freeze and working to reestablish and reinstate that funding for these centers once these audit findings are resolved. So assuming the audit findings are resolved, can I get your commitment to restore the funding for these MEP programs at Ohio?
Yes.
Okay, that's very, very important. And you obviously support continuing these programs as part of NIST missions to strengthen U.S. manufacturing.
Senator, like I said, I'm fully committed to advancing manufacturing and reindustrialization in America. And whatever resources Congress provides NIST to do so, I'll make sure that we do our very best to make full utilization of those resources to advance manufacturing in America. I'm fully committed to that.
Okay, let's get that done sooner than later. I recognize Senator from New Jersey.